that Ramadan that I was writing this book, it was really for so many reasons. It was such a miraculous Ramadan for me. I was writing the book between, coming home from Tarawih and writing until Fajr every single day. I found it easier to write at that time. And it just happened that there were things that were going on within the public space, whether in America or in the UK, that were happening in those hours. And one of those things was Grenfell Tower fire. This moment was, subhanAllah, I just remember, like, I was writing about the different types of structural inequality that exist in the UK. And literally the thing that I was typing about was about housing and the way that housing operates, and the way that, kind of people who are less privileged are packed into these substandard homes, and they are left to rot in them. They are, kind of really abused in terrible ways. And then I was totally overcome by the images that were coming out from this tower block that set on fire. And I had friends who lived literally 2 roads away from the tower itself, and they have their phones out and they're literally live streaming what's taking place. There's other friends who are gathering aid and like going in vans, because one of the things, obviously the beneficial things, was that the only people who were really awake at that time were Muslims, because they were coming out of Qiyam al-Layl. They were coming out of their prayers and they were seeing this. And so they became first responders. There were so many young Muslims who ran into that building, knocking on doors, telling people to come out, because they could see from the outside that this fire was taking place. And so, the Grenfell Tower, it's still there. They've covered it up now because the carcass of the building just looked too ugly. And, subhanAllah, it's such a horrific thing when you think about it, that the reason why this tower became so flammable in the first place was because the rich residents in the area said that it was an eyesore. They didn't like to look at it. And so they put this cheap cladding on the outside, and that cladding was highly flammable. And that's why these people died, because the wealthy in the area didn't want to see this kind of big building that looks so ugly in their line of sight. And so it tells you a lot about the way in which society organizes itself, the way that it structures itself, the way that it sees the poorest amongst us